They called me Bante, the guard. Not because I was big or intimidating, but because I always volunteered for the last shift during our classroom duty rotations. Third floor, room 3B, St. Catherine Academy. While my classmates fought over morning shifts so they could leave early, I preferred the quiet of late afternoons. Just me, a broom, and the fading sunlight through dusty windows. I thought I knew every corner of that floor. I was wrong. It started during the rainy season of my junior year. Our school, built in the 1960s, had 3 floors, the third being the oldest, with creaking wooden panels and that distinct smell of old textbooks and floor wax. My friends, Carlo, May, and JP, would sometimes keep me company, but that particular October, they'd all joined different clubs that met after school. So there I was, alone most days, sweeping corridors that seemed to stretch longer as the sun set. The first strange thing happened on a Thursday. I was arranging the chairs in our classroom when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate steps. I assumed it was Sir Reyes, our physics teacher, who sometimes worked late. But when I checked, the corridor was empty. Completely empty. The footsteps continued, moving away from me towards the old faculty room at the end of the hall that hadn't been used in years. Then they stopped. Just like that. Dead silence. I told May about it the next day. She went pale. "You don't know?" she whispered during recess. "About the third floor guard?" According to her, students in the 70s talked about a security guard who patrolled the third floor every evening. He died during a fire in 1978, trying to make sure all the students had evacuated. They say he never stopped his rounds. I laughed it off. Old school legend, right? But May wasn't smiling. "Bante," she said, using my nickname with unusual seriousness, "maybe you should switch shifts?" I didn't switch. Pride, maybe? Or stubbornness. But I started noticing more. The temperature would drop suddenly in certain spots of the hallway, specifically near room 3D and outside the abandoned faculty room. My breath would fog up even though it wasn't that cold outside. The fluorescent lights would flicker in sequence as if something was walking beneath them, triggering each one. And those footsteps. I heard them every single afternoon now, always at 5047 p.m. I checked my phone each time. Always 5047. One afternoon, Carlo decided to wait with me. He wanted proof that I wasn't just making things up. We sat in the classroom, door open, waiting. 5:45 p.m. The hallway was dimly lit, most of the lights already turned off by the janitor downstairs. 5:46 p.m. Carlo was joking nervously, trying to lighten the mood. 5:47 p.m. The footsteps began. Carlo's face went white. We both heard them clearly. Heavy boots on wooden floor, steady and methodical. But this time, they weren't walking away. They were coming closer. We stood frozen as the footsteps approached our classroom. The lights flickered wildly. That's when I saw him. Or rather, his shadow. A tall figure moved past our doorway, cast against the opposite wall by some unseen light source. The silhouette wore an old security guard uniform, the kind with a peaked cap. But there was no body casting the shadow. Just the shadow itself, moving independently, patrolling. Carlo grabbed my arm, pulling me back. The shadow stopped, right in front of our door. Shh. We held our breath. Then slowly, deliberately, the shadow turned. Towards us. I felt ice-cold air rush into the room, carrying with it the smell of smoke and ash. Old smoke. Decades-old air rush into the room, carrying with it the smell of smoke and ash. Old smoke. Decades old. T-ache. The shadow raised its arm, a salute, a warning. Before we could process it, the lights went completely dark. When they flickered back on seconds later, the shadow was gone. Carlo and I ran. We didn't stop until we reached the ground floor, bursting out into the fading daylight like we were being chased by hell itself. We reported to the guard station, gasping. The old guard on duty, Mang Tapring, listened quietly. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. 5:47 p.m. That was the exact time the fire started. October 15, 1978. He's still checking, making sure everyone gets out safe. Mang Tapring walked us to the chapel. He explained that the third-floor guard, Mang Rudy was his name, had been a devoted man. After his death, students reported seeing him, but he never hurt anyone. He was still protecting. Still doing his duty. He probably saluted you, Mang Tapring said, because you remind him of himself, a guard, someone who stays behind to make sure everything is safe. He gave us small bottles of holy water and told us to sprinkle it in the classroom as a sign of respect, to let Mang Rudy know we honored his sacrifice. The next day, with May and JP for support, we returned during daylight. We sprinkled the holy water, said a prayer, and left a small candle by the abandoned faculty room. I whispered, "Thank you for protecting us, Mang Rudy. You can rest now." I don't know if he heard me. I don't know if it made a difference. But I do know this. I still heard the footsteps occasionally after that, but they felt different. Less ominous. More like a reassuring presence. I finished my junior year keeping my shift. My nickname stuck, Bonte, the guard. And sometimes, when I swept that third floor corridor at 5:47 p.m., I'd feel that cold spot and I'd nod. One guard acknowledging another. I graduated 2 years ago, but I still think about Mang Rudy, about dedication so strong it transcends death. St. Catherine Academy still stands, and that third floor still gets cold in certain spots. If you've ever felt watched in an empty school corridor or heard footsteps with no source, maybe you've met your own guardian too. Share your story, because sometimes the things we fear in the dark are actually watching over us. And if you've experienced something similar in your own school, drop a comment below. Let's keep these stories alive, because the guardians certainly are. Salamat for listening to mine.